Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Valencia, and it is a real pleasure to welcome you to the 2025 Assessment and Accountability Information Meeting, also known as AAIM. This meeting is brought to you by the California Department of Education. And this year, we're doing things a little bit differently. We're going to be taking you on a road trip through the updates to the assessments and assessment system. So buckle up because we're hitting the road and using a lot of road trip metaphors and puns. Today's journey will take us through key updates and destinations across the assessment landscape. You'll learn about new features, important reminders, some upcoming stops you'll want to plan for. So just like any good road trip, we'll have a clear map, a few scenic overlooks, and maybe even a roadside attraction or two. All righty, before we jump into the content, let's go over our rules for this road trip. First, we have 2 stops planned today. Basically, these are attendee processing breaks, and they're going to allow you time to reflect on the information you're hearing. As we cruise on down the highway of updates today, all passengers are currently in listen-only mode. Basically, everyone's on mute. So if you have any questions along the way, please drop them into the Q&A Google form. For this meeting, we're not using the Zoom Q&A feature that has been turned off. Instead, we're placing a link to the Q&A Google form into the chat. And by clicking this link, it's going to let you submit your questions and categorize them by topic, which is a pretty cool feature. Also, we got the dash cam rolling. Basically, this meeting is being recorded, so if you miss a turn or want to revisit any part of the trip, you'll be able to watch the full tour when the recording is posted soon. Also, you should have received an itinerary for today, also known as a resource guide. It was emailed out yesterday. If you already have your copy, awesome. You will have all the notes and links you need. If you don't have it yet, we will be placing the link to the resource guide into the chat. And please keep in mind that the link will take you to a Google Drive folder where you will have to download your own copy or make a copy into your own Google Drive before you can edit the document, okay? And with that, let's buckle up, let's get going and put the key in the ignition and start our journey with our first stop, the welcome messages. To kick off this informational meeting series, please welcome Mary Nicely, Deputy Superintendent of the California Department of Education, or CDE's Information and Technology Branch, and Dr. Mao Vang, Director of the Assessment Development and Administration Division at the CDE.
Thank you, Paul. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Mary Nicely. I'm the Deputy Superintendent of the Information and Technology Branch, which includes assessment and accountability. I would like to welcome you to the 2025 Assessment and Accountability Information Meeting, and thank you for joining us today on this journey. This meeting series is CDE's annual communication to share program updates and provide you with the information you need to be successful when it comes to planning, preparing, and understanding assessments and accountability. Today, we are focused on assessment updates. We are dedicating the meeting on August 14th to the California School Dashboard and accountability updates. I would now like to welcome the Director of the Assessment Development and Administration Division, Mao Vang, to provide more details about today's meeting. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Mary. Hello, everyone. As Mary stated, the purpose of this meeting series is to provide local educational agency coordinators with the most recent information and developments on our California's assessment and accountability systems. So in previous years, there were 2 assessment meetings. This year, we will have only 1 to focus on updates and new information. So there are several systems of support in place to assist you along the way. The CAASPP and ELPAC website was redone last year, and we hope that finding information you need is more streamlined as a result. Our success agents at the California Technical Assistance Center are there to support you. And in addition, the CDE has many resources available, such as, the new coordinators training series, the interim and formative assessment training series, many on-demand trainings and modules about a variety of topics, including scoring and reporting, accessibility, opportunities to get involved, and much more. Some of these are listed in your resource guide. So today's presentation includes updates from the following offices: English language proficiency and Spanish assessments, the interim and formative assessments, science, English, language arts, and mathematics, and the National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP. The agenda topics include updates about accessibility, the test delivery system enhancements, the ELPAC, the teacher hand scoring system, the California alternate assessments, the California Spanish assessments, the starting smarter websites, achievement level descriptors, the California Educator reporting system, or SERS, and we'll end with updates from our California NAEP coordinator. So there will also be 2 20-minute question and answer sessions, and our program staff will take you on a journey as they share the changes with you. So get ready for a road trip through California's assessment updates. And that's all from me, Paul. I'm turning it back to you to introduce our next presenter.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mal. Thank you, Mary. All righty, so please welcome our first driver today, Education Programs Consultant, Dr. Jessica Jennings, to update you about accessibility and test delivery system enhancements.
Thank you, Paul. Welcome to the accessibility resources leg of today's journey. Lewis Carroll famously said, "If you don't know where you're going, any road can get you there." But with that in mind, we begin our road trip when we want to consider where we want our students to go in terms of assessments and what route is best to get them there. With that in mind, as we begin our road trip, we want to consider where we want our students to go, and the start of the assessment journey is where accessibility is best considered to make sure students get the resources they need and are confident using instruction to show what they know and can do. The California Accessibility Resources Matrix, also known as the Matrix, is a sort of guidebook that describes all the accessibility options for students by assessment, which helps educators strategically plan each student's assessment journey. Every year, the California Department of Education, or CDE, works to improve the matrix to ensure educators can better utilize and determine which resources to employ so assessments are accessible for each individual student. This year, we made both minor edits to some of the descriptions, as well as the following key updates. Buckle up for a quick tour around our matrix updates. An updated 2025 California Resource Matrix will be posted on the Accessibility Resources pages in this fall, so it's not currently in your resource guide. Our first turn will have us cruising through the accessibility updates that apply to all test programs. First, a reminder of the 3 types of accessibility resources. Universal tools are available to all students on the basis of student preference and selection. Designated supports are available to all students when determined for use by an educator or team of educators, or with parent, guardian, and student input as appropriate, or as specified in the student's Individualized Education Program, or IEP, or Section 504 plan. Accommodations must be permitted to all eligible students taking CAASPP and ELPAC tests if it is specified in the student's IEP or Section 504 plan. New this year, we have non-embedded sensory items as an accommodation, so students may use sensory items, for example, fidgets, textured seat cushions, or foot rockers to help them stay focused and engaged during the assessment. Now let's move on to our next stop. We have clarified that not only plain paper or lined paper is appropriate for English Language Arts or ELA and the English Language Proficiency Assessments for California or ELPAC. Similarly, graph paper can be used at all grade levels for math, but is only required beginning at 6th grade and up. A final reminder for all assessments is the clarification of the alternate response options are allowed for students to use their preferred mode of communication on all assessments. Our next turn takes us to the updates for California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, or CAASPP. The function of drag and drop items is enhanced to allow students to either click or drag their responses to the correct spot in the answer box. For the California Spanish Assessment, or the CSA writing, embedded and non-embedded speech to text and word completion are now available for use. In addition, for the CSA speaking, the text-to-speech resource is now available for use as a designated support for stimuli and items, but not for reading passages, similar to ELA. For the California Science Test, or CAST, the Spanish toggle is now an embedded designated support, similar to the CAASPP math functionality. This replaces the previous stacked Spanish functionality. Also for the CAST, Braille, there's a new way to access definition of lost words aimed at simplifying navigation for students using the Job Access with Speech, or JAWS, a computer screen reader program that allows blind and visually impaired students to read the screen either with a text-to-speech output or by a refreshable Braille display. This enhancement ensures uninterrupted reading through items and includes a paper resource for the test paper version. And finally, translated test directions will automatically be part of the translated math content and available to students using the dual language full translations designated support in both English and Spanish. Our last turn on this matrix update excursion brings us to an ELPAC specific update. The text-to-speech has been removed from the listening domain as all the items are audio recorded for students. Now we're going to switch gears and discuss accessibility enhancements in the test delivery system, or the TDS. We are excited to introduce new customization features for students. Students with assigned designated supports can now personalize their available supports directly during testing. For example, students may adjust the volume, pitch, and speed of the embedded text-to-speech, or TTS, or even turn TTS on or off entirely. Similarly, students can change the size and color of their mouse pointer. The test settings pop-up is located at the top right-hand side of the student's screen, next to the zoom buttons. While testing, students can independently adjust the mouse pointer. They can change the color and size, color contrast, selecting preferred color schemes, text-to-speech tracking, which they can turn on and off. And this update gives students more control and flexibility to adjust accessibility features in real time. Another exciting new update to the TDS is the addition of embedded 100s and multiplication tables for easier access for math and science items. This resource is still an accommodation for math and a designated support for science. And finally, the constructed response spaces showcase a new modern look and an icon library for students to use while drafting a response. Our trip through the matrix and the TDS has concluded. Now we'll motor on to updates regarding the initial ELPAC and the ELPAC information guide. An ancient Chinese proverb once said, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." This is true in life, but also in the initial ELPAC. As a reminder, the initial ELPAC is administered only once to all newly enrolled students in a California public school whose primary language is not English. If a student is eligible for an alternate assessment and has an individualized education program or IEP designating it, they are tested with the initial alternate ELPAC. If the IEP isn't finalized, the student should still be tested with the initial ELPAC within 30 calendar days, according to the timeline, using universal tools and, if appropriate, designated supports. For the 25-26 initial ELPAC, approximately 30% of the test items have been refreshed. Therefore, all local education agencies or LEAs are required to complete the LEA certification course by tomorrow, August 8th, 2025. Please keep in mind, any LEA that has not completed the training may be subject to a Tier 2 audit. So let's get those trainings done. In addition, there are also enhancements to the teacher hand scoring system, or the THSS, for initial ELPAC and interim assessments, which will be discussed by the next presenter further down the road. Now we're going to merge into a new topic. A change this year in the Test Operations Management System, or TOMS, is the location of the initial ELPAC and the initial ELPAC reports. Reports are no longer on the initial ELPAC reports tab. Instead, they're now found under the LEA reports or site reports tab, offering a new view but of the same information. A list of impacted reports is in the resource guide. Similarly, we have aggregated these specific reports into a single report with a drop-down menu selections for each ELPAC. There's an ELPAC eligibility report, the ELPAC school level demographic snapshot, and the ELPAC LEA level student demographic snapshot report are all merged into one document. And finally, there's a new report this year, the ELPAC Students Meeting Reclassification Criteria 1 report. This is to support LEA and site coordinators in identifying students who are eligible for reclassification, who've met criteria 1 and are ready to be evaluated for criteria 2, 3, and 4. Yeah, I'm seeing all the love with that one, right? It's very exciting. We're very excited. So much like our cars, we regularly tune up our resources. This year, we reviewed the ELPAC information guide and both made minor and major updates based on LEA feedback and program changes. The minor changes we made include, they were dates throughout the guide, the estimated testing times for the initial ELPAC. Additionally, we included information on the exclusion of transitional kindergarten students and the inclusion of census day information testing requirements for unduplicated pupil counts. That was a mouthful, sorry. And finally, minor updates were made to the appendices to reorganize the listings due to the addition of several extra resources. The major update this year was the addition of a new chapter called the Accessibility Resources, with an added introduction with key links to resources, including the CDE Student Accessibility Resource webpage. Next, we moved the California Assessment Accessibility Resources Matrix subsection under this new chapter, as it's applicable to all students, not just students with disabilities. And finally, for better visibility, the in-chapter menu topics of domain exemptions and selective mutism subsections were moved under the main chapter menu for the Assessing Students with Disability for English Learner Proficiency chapter. So that's it for me. Back to you, Paul, to introduce our next presenter. Thanks, you guys.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jessica. A lot of great information there. Okay, our trip through the initial ELPAC has concluded. Now we're going to motor on to the updates regarding the teacher hand scoring system. Please welcome Education Programs Consultant, Sharmila Edwards.
Thank you, Paul. Hello, I am Sharmila Edwards of the Interim and Formative Assessments Office, and I'll be navigating this leg of our trip. Before we head over for updates to the interim assessments and resources to support the formative assessment process, we'd like to share a quick video which highlights recent changes to the Teacher Hand Scoring System, or THSS. In the spirit of continuous improvement, the CDE and our contractors have been working behind the scenes to enhance our systems and this part of your experience with the initial ELPAC and interim assessments. We listened to your feedback and took the opportunity to improve our resources to enhance your experience. To that end, we have 4 featured updates to show you, including easier navigation, visual cues to highlight student responses that have been pending for an extended period of time, a full window display of rubrics, resources, and item details, and a faster, more efficient scoring process. Let's take a look.
Welcome to this demonstration video sponsored by the California Department of Education. This video covers enhancements to the Teacher Hand Scoring System for the 2025-26 CAASPP and ELPAC administrations. The Teacher Hand Scoring System, or THSS interface, has been enhanced to make it more user-friendly. Educators are now able to filter and search for tests and see visual cues to help users identify tests that have been pending for an extended period of time. In addition, the scoring page displays rubrics, resources, and item details in one window, and score changes now save automatically. Lastly, scores can be submitted directly from the scoring page. Now let's review these enhancements in a little more detail. On the dashboard, users can open the Filters menu to narrow the list of tests by assessment group, domain or subject, grade, and manner of administration. If the user selects the checkbox for Make these my default selections, the filter selections will be saved each time the user logs in. Users can also search for tests using the keyword search bar. The Days in System column will display how many days that particular test has been in the THSS. That column also includes a visual scoring reminder, a red exclamation point icon, to indicate tests that have not been scored for an extended period of time. For the initial ELPAC, the icon will appear after 3 days. For interim assessments, the icon will appear after 7 days. On the item scoring page, the interface has been improved to help navigate during scoring. The current item area has forward and back arrow buttons to switch between items from the same student. The current student area has a drop-down menu and up and down arrow buttons to switch between multiple students. Users can now toggle rubric and resources on or off. When the toggle is on, the page is rearranged to show additional collapsible sections with item details, item resources, and rubrics all in one page. The scoring section has been enhanced to automatically save whenever a score is assigned or changed. Lastly, once all items for a student's test are scored, scores can be submitted straight from the item scoring page. We hope you find these enhancements help to make the hand scoring process more seamless. For more information, please visit caasp-elpac.org. Thanks for watching.
All right. Our trip through the Teacher Hand Scoring System has concluded, and now we'll motor on to updates regarding the interim and formative assessments. As we enter our interim and formative assessments updates, let's start with a quick review of where the interim assessments and tools for teachers fit into California's comprehensive assessment system. The interim assessments are one of the 3 main components of the system. The other 2 components are the end-of-year summative assessments and tools for teachers, which is the formative assessment component. All 3 components of the system are meant to be used together to support the teaching and learning of state standards throughout the year. with the ultimate goal of students being ready by the end of high school for college and career. The interim assessments include the ELPAC interim assessments, the CAASPP interim assessments, and the Smarter Balanced interim assessments for ELA and math. Let's go over the available interim assessments within each program for this school year. The 2025-26 ELPAC interim assessments will consist of the same 56 forms that were available last school year. The ELPAC interim assessments are organized by domain with the same grade levels and grade spans as the summative ELPAC. The domains are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And the grade levels or grade spans are kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, and grade spans 3 through 5, 6 through 8, 9 and 10, and 11 and 12. The 56 ELPAC interim assessments consist of 2 forms for each grade level or grade span and domain. Again, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. The 2025-26 CAASPP interim assessments also consist of the same 18 forms that were available last school year. There are 2 forms for each of grades 3, 4, and 5, 6 forms for middle school, and 6 forms for high school. For grades 3, 4, and 5, the CAASPP interim assessments are organized by grade level performance expectations, and all 3 science domains are assessed within the interim assessment for each grade. For middle and high school, the CAASPP interim assessments are organized by science domain, earth and space sciences, life sciences, and physical sciences. Each CAASPP interim assessment includes 1 performance task with a constructive response that requires hand scoring. And a quick reminder that hand scoring is a local responsibility. For the 2025-26 school year, there continue to be 3 types of Smarter Balanced interim assessments available for both ELA and math. The interim comprehensive assessments, or ICAs, cover the broadest content, most similar to the Smarter Balanced summative assessments. Note that California continues to use the adjusted blueprint for the summative assessments, so the interim comprehensive assessments are longer than the summative assessments. The interim assessment blocks, or IABs, focus on smaller sets of related concepts and provide more detailed information for instructional purposes. And finally, the focused interim assessment blocks, or FIABs, assess even smaller content sets and generally 1 to 3 assessment targets. In addition to the Smarter Balanced interim assessments that were available last school year, we're happy to announce 22 new Smarter Balanced interim assessments for the 2025-26 school year. This year, there are a total of 142 ELA interim assessment forms, including 14 new focused interim assessment blocks. Specifically, there are 2 new focused interim assessment blocks for each of grades 3 through 8 and high school: text analysis literary and text analysis informational. For math, there are a total of 107 math interim assessment forms, including the 8 new focused interim assessment blocks. The new math forms include 4 forms for elementary grades and 4 forms for high school. Specifically, we have represent and interpret data for grade 3, angles and their measurement and problem solve with measurements at grade 4, patterns and relationships at grade 5, graphing equations and inequalities, linear and exponential, at grade 11, graph equations and inequalities, quadratic, at grade 11, analyzing building functions, linear and exponential, and analyzing building functions, quadratic, both at grade 11 as well. I will now cover some key considerations for using the CAASPP and ELPAC interim assessments. The interim assessments are optional assessments that are available year-round and can be used quite flexibly. They can be administered in either a standardized manner, like a benchmark assessment, or in a non-standardized manner, like as part of the formative assessment occurring during classroom instruction. Establishing TOMS roles for school staff at the beginning of the school year maximizes the length of staff access to the interim assessments during the school year. This applies to tools for teachers as well, because both of these resources are available year-round. The interim assessments are secure assessments, meaning only local educational agency or LEA staff and students are permitted to access them. While the CDE does not require the completion of security affidavit to access the interim assessments, LEAs do have the option to require the completion of a locally provided form. New for this school year, the CDE is offering a sample optional interim assessment security form. It's for local use only, and you may modify it and make it your own. California law prohibits the use of the interim assessments for any high-stakes decisions such as teacher evaluation, grade promotion or retention, or reclassification of English learners. California Education Code Section 60642.7b provides additional examples of prohibited uses. We strongly encourage educators to include the interim assessments as one component of a larger system for determining students' proficiency, one which includes multiple measures. As a reminder, we do have the interim assessment administrator only TOMS role that can be assigned to a user at the school level and has the following system responsibilities and permissions: administration only of the interim assessments to students, access to the interim assessment viewing system, access to the completion status reports system, access to the teacher hand scoring system, which includes the ability to view interim assessment constructed responses for all students at the site and to score responses for which the interim assessment administrator has been assigned, and access to the interim assessment results available through SIRS for the students in the student groups assigned to them by a coordinator. A number of resources are provided to support the understanding and use of the CAASPP and ELPAC interim assessments. The interim assessments lookup tool allows educators to search for all available interim assessments: Smarter Balanced ELA in Math, CAASPP, and ELPAC. It provides an overview of all available state-provided interim assessments, including details such as content alignment, total number of items, and number of items requiring hand scoring for each assessment. These details can be quite helpful in teachers planning for interim assessments use throughout their school year. It's also helpful for administrators who might be introducing staff to the interim assessments or to the hand scoring portion. The interim assessment viewing system allows educators to view all available interim assessments as our students see them in the student interface, helping them to understand the types of questions and the scope of the content on the interim assessments. It also enables teachers to demonstrate for students how to use the embedded accessibility resources, such as the highlighter, masking tool, and line reader. This interim assessment viewing system is an excellent resource to use in a formative way with students. It can be used to display as an item for the class, model different ways to solve it, or talk through the questions together as a whole class, giving students an understanding of the structure and expectations of the interim assessments. It is important to note that responses are not saved, scored, or submitted when using the interim assessment viewing system. The interim assessment user guide is designed to support understanding and use of both CAASPP and ELPAC interim assessments. It's divided into sections which address the overall process of administering the assessments, how to use the system, user roles, how to use other tools such as the teacher hand scoring system, the data entry interface, and SIRS. The interim assessment video series is yet another resource which consists of 6 modules designed to introduce the interim assessment's purpose and content, as well as how to use their related systems. The 6 modules of the interim assessment video series cover a general introduction, the interim assessment viewing system, administration of the CAASPP and ELPAC interim assessments, scoring the interim assessments, and finally a video about SIRS. Each video is about 4 to 10 minutes long. The CAASPP and ELPAC interim webpage on casp-elpac.org is your ultimate resource for all things interim assessments. There's a general introduction, links to related systems which support their use, and information about the myriad of resources available to educators to assist in planning, administration, scoring, and evaluation of the results of the interim assessments. Links to all of the resources I've mentioned are also contained in your resource guide for this presentation. Let's pull over for formative assessment updates. The formative assessment component of California's comprehensive system of assessment is tools for teachers. In comparing the three main components of the system, summative, interim, and formative, formative assessment is the component of our system where teachers spend the majority of their time. This occurs during instruction and provides timely feedback to inform further instruction. Tools for Teachers is an online collection of instructional and professional learning resources that are free to all California K-12 public school educators. Instructional resources or lesson plans contain step-by-step directions and embedded formative assessment and accessibility strategies that teachers can use with students to support learning in ELA, math, and science. Each instructional resource and Tools for Teachers embeds the formative assessment process so teachers can easily implement the 4 attributes of the process that include clarifying instruction, eliciting evidence of student learning, interpreting that evidence, and taking action to boost the learning in the classroom right in the moment during instruction. Tools for Teachers also offers interim assessments connections playlists, which are groups of instructional resources aligned with the content accessed or assessed by specific ELA and math interim assessment blocks and focused interim assessment blocks. In addition to the instructional resources, there are dozens of professional learning resources available in Tools for Teachers, from which educators may also choose. 10 of the professional learning resources focus specifically on how educators can become familiar with ELPAC speaking and writing task types, and how to provide needed support for students who are English learners in the classroom. These resources support the use of the ELPAC interim assessments. All of the professional learning resources can be used by a facilitator with a group of educators, or educators can do the activities on their own and have an emphasis on the formative assessment process, covering topics that help educators understand the tools, resources, and assessments available. Educators can also find resources about topics such as how to use interim assessment blocks in the classroom and how to set up effective school-to-home partnerships. California public school educators can access Tools for Teachers either by creating an account on their own, described in the How to Self-Register for Tools for Teachers flyer linked in your resource guide, or by contacting their LEA CAASPP or ELPAC coordinator. Finally, we have just finished working with our ELD experts again on developing 9 new professional learning resources for ELPAC listening and reading task types. They will be coming soon to Tools for Teachers late this fall and go through the winter. The Tools for Teachers homepage structure and content have undergone a bit of a makeover. You'll notice changes have been made to highlight how the tools and resources available can benefit teachers by providing the information and context on the Tools for Teachers homepage. There are also 2 new features on the left side of the page, Get Started and Feedback. Selecting the Get Started button opens a page that provides a general overview of the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, the Smarter Balanced Assessment System, the formative assessment process, and connected Smarter Balanced tools. The Feedback button opens a page to send feedback about your Tools for Teachers experience, whether the homepage, search experience, lesson plans, bookmarks, and notes, or something else. Users must be logged in to see this option. The navigation has been improved to make finding Smarter Balanced tools and resources easier for teachers. The Print button at the top of each lesson's page now allows the user to only have 2 options: to either print the lesson instructions only or all sections of the lesson. Attachments still have to be downloaded and printed separately. During last year's AIM update, we shared a more streamlined filter process and a new 3-column design to display search results in Tools for Teachers. This year, the search page loading speed is faster, and there's a new format for the instructional resources, one which has been called leaner, yet still educator-friendly. The Tools for Teachers resources page on CAASPP-elpac.org also hosts various resources to assist in the formative assessment process. These resources include Tools for Teachers training videos, flyers, and other online formative assessment tools. The CDE sponsors a number of trainings throughout the year to support understanding and use of the CAASPP and ELPAC interim assessments and tools for teachers, and to enhance educator experience with them. One such opportunity is the Interim Informative Assessment Training Series, which consists of webinars and workshops designed to engage educators in the various components of the formative assessment process. This year, we've introduced an educator panel to the series for representatives from LEAs across the state to share their experiences and best practices in a conversational format. It will occur between the two webinars and the hand scoring workshops, one to cover each subject area, ELA, math, CAST, and ELPAC, which has been split into two separate sessions, one for speaking and one for writing. The summer sessions have just concluded, and registration is just open for the fall sessions, which begin on September 15th. There will be on-demand shared practices sessions focusing on the interim assessments and tools for teachers at this year's California Assessment Conference, which will be in Riverside, California, November 12th through 14th, 2025. This year's conference will focus on assessment in action, sharing strategies to support student learning. The registration link is located on the upcoming and on-demand training page on the CAASPP-LPAC.org website. This is the same location for the on-demand training sessions, which are available throughout the year. In early 2026, the CDE will host the Formative Assessment Shared Practices webinar series, consisting of 3 webinars where LEA staff from across the state will share strategies for promoting and using formative assessment tools and resources locally. Presenters will include California teachers, administrators, and test coordinators from districts and counties of various sizes. The 3 webinars, which will take place again in early 2026, will focus on the same subject areas of assessments: Smarter Balanced ELA and math, science, and ELPAC. Details to come. That's all from me for interim informative assessment updates. Back to our tour guide, Paul.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sharmila. That wraps it up for this leg of our trip. There you have our interim and formative assessment updates for 2025-26 school year. Now let's continue our journey to updates regarding the California Alternate Assessments, or CAAs. Please welcome Education Programs Assistant Krista Pohl.
Thank you so much, Paul, and hello, everyone. It's great to have you here with us today for all of these updates. Let's journey on. So I'll go ahead and take the wheel here for a few minutes for a few important general updates about the California Alternate Assessments, or the CAAs, and then I'll go into some changes to be aware of that are specific to the CAA for Science, starting this school year for the 2025-2026 test administration. The first and only general CAA update we have for you impacts all LEAs, and it's regarding the 1% justification survey. So starting with some background information here, the Every Student Succeeds Act requires LEAs to notify the California Department of Education, us, if they expect to exceed 1% of their total assessed student population that will be taking the alternate assessments. So previously, all LEAs were required to respond to a justification survey based on students who had their LEA listed as their district of residence in the, bear with me here, California Longitudinal Pupil Achievement Data System, or CalPADS. Sorry, that is a mouthful. And new for this year, LEAs will only report based on students who are actually tested at the LEA. Therefore, if you assess students from different LEAs, you must include these students in your LEA's survey because they were tested with you. So I'm sure you're wondering now when the survey opens. The 1% justification survey opens at the end of September, and all LEAs, again, all LEAs, regardless of whether they anticipate exceeding the 1% cap, anticipate not exceeding the 1% cap, or have no students at all expected to take the alternate assessments, still must complete the survey. And a quick tip that I want to leave you with, there is a widget in TOMS that will hopefully make accessing the survey and completing it easier. So that was really the only general update applicable to all CAAs. So let's transition now to the CAA for Science updates. There are a few changes starting this school year. We want to prepare you for a smooth road ahead. So let's go ahead and get into it. Let's start with the CAA for Science test administration changes. First, the required number of embedded performance tasks, or PTs, will be reduced to 3 instead of 4, requiring test examiners to administer 1 fewer embedded PT. Each embedded PT is going to continue to assess one of the 3 science domains. So one is Earth and Space Sciences, one is Life Sciences, and one is Physical Sciences. And now with one fewer PT, each is going to have 15 questions instead of 10 questions. So one fewer PT overall to administer, but each of the 3 is now just going to be a smidge longer. Last, for the administration changes, the student responsiveness survey at the end of each embedded PT has been removed. So test examiners will no longer answer questions about student responsiveness at the end of each domain-specific PT. I see some party things going on. A thumbs up, that's great. We do have some communication tools that I want to draw your attention to if they are helpful for you. The organization of the CAA for Science flyer would be a really good one, and it has been updated and reflects all the changes that I've mentioned so far. It's linked in your resource guide, so find it there. Moving away now from test administration changes, the last change is an update to the number of forms available for assignment to each LEA. And this is really important because the test form is going to determine which directions for administration or DFA you're going to use and which administration planning guide that you should use. And previously, the CAA for Science had 4 forms, and we were kind of the oddballs. The CAA for Science will now have 2 forms, and your form assignment is going to match that at ELA and Math. So you'll either be assigned Form 1 or Form 2 for all of the CAA subject areas that are applicable to your students. The form assignments for each LEA have already been posted, and you can find them on the CAASPP and ELPAC website on the CAA for Science form assignments webpage, and that's also linked in your resource guide, so you don't have to remember the name of the webpage. All right, we've reached our mileage marker here. So here's a recap and really just a few big important reminders for the CAA for Science administration. So as you plan for the administration of the CAA for Science this school year, please do consider how fewer embedded PTs, so moving from 4 to now 3 that are 15 questions each instead of 10, will impact your planning and your scheduling for you and the schools and teachers and administrators that you support. The administration planning guides for the 2025-26 school year are already available and reflect the changes that have been presented today. They're linked in your resource guide, so please share those with your test examiners and school administrators as you begin the planning process. A couple additional resources you may consider sharing are the Preparing for Administration or PFA document and the Tips for Administering the CAA for Science flyer. And those, again, are linked in your resource guide and provide steps for both planning and preparing to administer the test. And a couple final important reminders that we like to kind of bring up every time we have AIM each year for CAA for Science is the test administration window for CAA for Science opens in mid-September. This year it will be September 16th and goes through the end of your instructional year or June 30th, whichever comes first. And it's structured this way for a reason. And that's so that test examiners administer each of the 3 embedded PTs right after students receive related instruction in each domain. So the performance tasks are not designed to be administered all at once or in just one sitting. So please plan accordingly and consider how the changes that were presented today will impact you and the school sites and teachers and test examiners that you support this year. And with that reminder, those are all of the CAA updates. Thank you so much for coming along for the ride for the CAAs. And please add any questions that you have about the CAAs, CAA for Science changes into the Q&A form so that we can answer any questions that you might still have. All right, Paul, I'm going to hand it back to you now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Krista. Okay, we're now going to take a 5-minute break. This is our first rest stop. All righty. Yeah, I guess we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got a couple seconds. So now it's time to fill up your tank of questions with answers. And today we have our managers from CDE, and they are going to be taking your questions. I guess I'm not sure who's up first. Is it Jessica?
I am up first.
Oh, Vigdis. Okay, you're welcome.
Hi, I am Dr. Vigdis Asmundsson. I am the manager of the Science Assessments Office at the California Department of Education. The first thing that I want to address is that the PowerPoint is going to be posted early next week. And the next question that I wanted to answer is there a PDF or training for teachers that I can use as a new coordinator to train staff? And this was specifically around the area of accessibility. So we have a lot of really wonderful trainings for you. They're in the on-demand training. So these are already there. They can be used asynchronously. There is a training called How to Assign and Check. There's a set of modules that is called How to Assign and Check Accessibility Resources. And this provides guidance on the appropriate assignment of accessibility resources in the classroom. This is for educators and administrators. And we really encourage that these are shared with anybody that might benefit from them. Special education specialists, curriculum coordinators, multilingual specialists, teachers on special assignment, anyone that might benefit from those. We also have a whole series for new coordinators that starts pretty soon. And the one in September focuses specifically on accessibility resources. So if you go to the training site on the CAASPP and ELPAC website, then you can find where all of those trainings are listed. And I am going to pass it over to Judy.
Hello, my name is Judy Yang, and I am the manager of the ELA and Math Formative office. And we did have a lot of questions on the sensory items, so I'm going to try to get through a couple of them together. One of the question was the sensory items. Remind us that the fidget sensory items are universal, non-embedded. So the non-embedded sensory items are accommodations. It must be selected in TOMS, and accommodations are only available for students with an IEP or 504, and it designates the use of the sensory item. We did have a question about the justification of making a sensory item an accommodation rather than designated support, and we want to thank you for the feedback. The decision was to make the sensory item an accommodation came from the Smarter Balance Consortium. So we can take this recommendation back to the team and discuss it for next admin year. We also have a question on if they adjust their supports for one test or one test section, does it apply to all others from that point on? So yes, once tools are adjusted in tests, the new settings will remain in place until the end of the test or until the student pauses or changes the test settings again. We have another question. Can students use a whiteboard to take notes while testing? And yes, a whiteboard with a marker may be used as scratch paper for all assessments. Do we still need to assign designated supports like mouse pointer, color contrast, if the students are able to adjust them while testing? With the new test settings button, do students need large mouse pointer and color contrast marked in TOMS as accommodation, or is it available for all? So the mouse pointer and the color contrast are still designated supports, which means they must be selected in TOMS to turn this function on. Once it's turned on, then the students will be able to access that test settings box where they can change their mouse pointer and color contrast. Will there still be a non-embedded option for the multiplication tables and hundreds charts for students with those supports written into the IEP of 504? Yes, both supports are now available, embedded and non-embedded. We have another one. It says it's a whole scenario, but essentially a student speaks a language other than English and not Spanish. What non-embedded resources can the student use to help the translation of instructions and stimuli to better understand the question? Can an employed school liaison who speaks the primary language translate the directions and the questions stimulus? And again, this is not for an ELA test, it's for math and science. So the answer to that is no, a human translator cannot translate the directions and the questions. We do have an ISAP tool and the CAS student matching needs tool on our CAASPP website that will list a lot of resources that will support students who have a language barrier. Then can we pass on to the next group? I think it's Tracy, is it ELPAC?
Thank you, Judy. Can you see me? Hi.
Yep.
Tracy Alvey, I'm administrator of the English Language Proficiency and Spanish Assessments Office. I will be answering some questions about the ELPAC. So is the ELPAC student meeting reclassification criteria 1 report new? When was that added? Yes, this is new this year. We added it in July. It went live July 7th. A recent communication on the report went out in our assessment spotlight either last week or the week before. Again, it is intended to help you identify enrolled students that may be eligible for reclassification at both the LEA and site level. But a reminder that only enrolled students will be included in the report. So those students have to be in your district in order for that information to come up. Next question. How do I find information about registering for the LEA certification course? So you can find information about the various Moodle courses on the Test Administration and Tutorials webpage on the CAASPP and ELPAC website, and I will add that link into the chat in a minute. For the LEA certification course, your LEA will have received an access key through email from the Sacramento County Office of Education. So please look for that email. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to your success agent as well, and they will help you. Next question, I read that if our LEA designee has completed the certification, that is fine too. I plan on doing it, but I just started and had it planned for this coming Monday. Does that work? So as you know, each of our courses has a different deadline. If you're referring to the initial ELPAC LEA certification, the deadline is tomorrow, August 8th, but Monday should be fine. But I do recommend that you send an email to elpac@scoe.net or caloutreach@ets.org just to let them know. And I'll provide you a little more information in another question. And then next question is, what is the deadline for LEA certification regarding the alternate initial ELPAC or the initial alternate ELPAC? So the deadline for completing the LEA certification for initial alternate ELPAC is 2 weeks after an eligible student is assigned to the initial alternate ELPAC. This is to ensure that the LEAs are making sure that they are prepared to support their test examiners in a timely manner within the 30-day timeline for administering the test. If your LEA normally has students assigned to the initial, of course, my dog's bark. If your LEA normally has students assigned to the initial alternate ELPAC each fall, then we recommend that you complete the certification as soon as possible. And the last question on the ELPAC is, how does an LEA need to complete or how an LEA certification by tomorrow, since we just learned about this today? She just stepped into the coordinator role. So we understand that changes and new coordinator assignments occur during the beginning of the new year. Therefore, LEAs that are unable to complete the certification by the deadline tomorrow will be sent a communication next week and provided additional time. Please note that this additional time comes with a caveat that if it is not completed by this final deadline, their LEA will be added to our Tier 2 audit list. So just giving you a heads up, you will be sent communications next week for those districts who have not met, and all of the information will be included in that communication on when the deadline is and if it's not completed by that time, what will happen. And then I will hand it over to our next presenter, Jessica, who will be talking about the teacher hand scoring.
Thanks, Tracy. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jessica Valdez, the administrator of the Interim and Formative Assessments Office at CDE. I'm going to respond to a handful of questions regarding the teacher hand scoring system, as well as the interim assessments and tools for teachers. So we received a few questions regarding the THSS, the teacher hand scoring system enhancements. First, a question about the possibility of getting access to the video that was shown earlier, or a quick reference guide for how to use the THSS. So a couple of elements to that response. The link to the video that was shown earlier has been dropped in the chat. So that is available to use, very handy to highlighting the recent enhancements. As far as instructions for using the teacher hand scoring system, we do have a section in the interim assessment user guide, as well as I believe the initial ELPAC user guide for how to use the THSS. That section is being updated right now and will be available soon for the interim assessments user guide. And then we do have a couple of videos with more general information about using the teacher hand scoring system. So be on the lookout. If you're not already subscribed to the assessment spotlight, which is the weekly update from the assessment division at the CDE. Do subscribe, because that's going to be the fastest way for you to stay apprised of resources as they become available. So the link to the enhancements video that was shown earlier is available now, though, in the chat. Also received a question about whether the enhancements that were discussed earlier by Sharmila, if those enhancements in the THSS pertain to all of the assessments that are scored through the teacher hand scoring system. And the answer is yes. So any of the CAASPP and ELPAC interim assessments that are scored through the hand scoring system, any of the initial ELPAC assessments that are scored through the hand scoring system, those new enhancements do pertain to all of the assessments. There's also a question about whether it is a possibility with these new enhancements to filter by assessment to group the student responses more easily. And the answer is yes, that is now an available feature of the hand scoring system. So we did hear loud and clear that was something that was a high priority system enhancement, and so very glad that our contractors were able to make that happen. And there is a question about the possibility of a future enhancement that would be essentially an export button that would pull a list of students or schools that have pending items in the hand scoring system. So that's not currently a feature. It's not on the roadmap either, but we are always accepting suggestions for future system enhancements. So we'll for sure take note of that and consider that for a future enhancement possibility. Now I'm going to move on to a few questions regarding the interim assessments and tools for teachers. So first, a question regarding the availability of a list of available interim assessments, as well as the number of items that require hand scoring. And all of that information is available through the interim assessment lookup tool. It's a relatively new online tool. It made its debut last year, and it is available through the CAASPPelpac.org website on the interim assessments page. And it's really a wonderful tool. It's publicly available. It allows us to search using various filters, search all of the CAASPP and ELPAC interim assessments. It indicates whether the interim assessment forms require hand scoring. If you would like to just search for interim assessments that do not require hand scoring, that's an option as well. And I do want to distinguish the difference between the interim assessment lookup tool, which I just described, publicly available, and the interim assessment viewing system, which is another key resource for educators who are wanting to get familiar with the interim assessments. So the interim assessment lookup tool is, as I mentioned, publicly available. It simply allows users to search for a listing of available interim assessments using different filters. The viewing system, on the other hand, is a secure access system, and it does provide educators who have the necessary TOMS role. It provides educators with access to the actual interim assessment forms. So there's an important distinction there. They both serve an important role, but wanted to distinguish between those two resources. There is another question about how to get access to tools for teachers. There are two ways to do so. The first way is through, if you happen to have a TOMS role assigned to you already, then you would use those same credentials to log into Tools for Teachers. If you do not currently have a TOMS role, but you have a work email address that is affiliated with your LEA, you can self-register. You can create a Tools for Teachers only role by self-registering. And in the resource guide for today's AIM session, there is a link to a quick reference guide for self-registering for Tools for Teachers. So there are two options there. And one more question I'm going to address before passing it back over to Paul is a question about the interim assessment item portal and when that will be updated for this school year. So the interim assessment item portal is available. It's specific to the ELA and math interim assessments, and it provides an option for sorting and filtering through specific interim assessment items. It also provides answer keys to the interim assessment forms. So that portal will be updated by the end of this month. And just a reminder, as Sharmila presented a bit ago, there are 22 new interim assessment forms for the Smarter Balanced interim assessments this year. So once the item portal is updated, the items for those new forms will be available. And again, the spotlight will be where we advertise that. So that's all I have for now, Paul. Back over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jessica. I think we have time for one more, and I believe I'm going to pass it over to Vigdis real quick, and then we'll get back on the road.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a few CAA questions, California Alternate Assessment for Science questions. The first one is, are we responsible for scores of students who are placed and tested in programs outside of our LEA? We do have an answer for you, but I also want to take this opportunity to remind everybody that next week's AIM is going to be about accountability. So accountability questions should be saved and asked next week. But I do want to note that per public reporting, students are aggregated to the LEA where they tested, reflected in the by tested data file. If they did test within NPS school, then they're aggregated to their district of residence. And then I also wanted, we also received a question about the engineering standards are listed in the strands. So this is referring now to CAA for science. Are these being embedded into each of the PTs? And yes, the engineering, technology, and applications of science domain standards are embedded into the questions. And this applies to both the CAA for science and the CAST test, the California Science Test. The questions are primarily assigned to one of the primary domains, earth and space sciences, life sciences, or physical sciences, but they also have embedded questions within them for the that cover engineering and technology sciences. I'm going to have Judy answer a couple more of the CAA questions.
Thank you, Vigdis. So we have a question about second scoring. Is there a penalty for LEAs that does not complete second scoring? So there is no penalty for not completing second scoring. However, LEAs should make every attempt to complete as much second scoring as possible as the information is used for validating scores. And then we have a couple questions about the 1%. Krista mentioned a new widget in TOMS for the 1% survey. So that widget is located on the My TOMS page where it has your test completion. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of that page under the CAA test data section, then you'll find the widget that Krista mentioned. Last question about the 1%. About 1% reported, do we include LEA students who are assessed at NPS or in the LEA's 1%? So yes, please include students at an NPS school with your LEA, but if the student is at a service-only county office of education and the county office will be required to report those students with their survey. Back to you, Vigdis, for the rest of the accessibility questions. Thank you.
Thanks, and I'm going to move it to Paul so that we can keep moving things along, but we will be back for more Q&A later.
Wonderful. Thank you, Vigdis. Thank you, Judy, Tracy, and Jessica. And thank you, everyone, for submitting your questions. All righty, our trip continues with California Spanish Assessment Updates. Please welcome Education Programs Consultant, Erica Frederickson.
Thanks, Paul. So our students explore different paths through their education journey, and for our Spanish-speaking and Spanish learning students, that path often includes the California Spanish Assessment, or CSA. First, I'd like to mention that construction has been completed for the CSA expansion. Beginning with the 2024-2025 administration, the CSA has expanded to include full right constructed response items in all grade levels and speaking constructed response items in high school. All constructed response items will be scored by the testing coordinator, ETF. So the last steps related to the construction of the CSA expansion are happening over the next couple of months. There will be a California State Board of Education, or SBE, August informational memorandum that will provide detailed information on the CSA standard setting workshop, that occurred July 17th through August 1st. So we just wrapped that up. Additionally, the CDE will bring forward to the SBE in September the following item for approval, which includes the State Superintendent of Public Instruction's recommended threshold scores for the CSA, the CSA Student Score Reports or SSRs, the State Superintendent of Public Instruction's recommended CSA threshold level to meet, in part, the requirements for the State Seal of Biliteracy. Okay. Conoces al viajero por sus maletas is a common saying. It translates roughly to the traveler is known by their luggage. When I think of our high school students, I think of what they can pack in their luggage to help them with their journey beyond high school. The State Seal of Biliteracy, marked by a gold seal on the diploma or transcript, would be of value to students whether they are applying for higher education or looking to start their careers. The State Seal of Biliteracy recognizes high school graduates who have attained a high level of proficiency in speaking, reading, and writing one or more languages in addition to English. If you don't already know, the CSA is a no-cost assessment, and contingent on the SBE's approval of the CSA threshold scores, high school students would be able to use the CSA to be eligible to meet, in part, the requirements for the State Seal of Biliteracy. Also, high school students can have up to 4 opportunities once per year in grades 9 through 12 to meet these requirements. So for more information on the State Seal of Biliteracy, please check out the web links in your resource guide. Finally, once approved by the SBE, the 2024-25 CSA Student Score Reports, which are the maps to our students' results, are tentatively planned to be released in December 2025, so stay tuned. I'll now send it back to Paul for our next stop.
Wonderful. Thank you, Erica. Alrighty, everyone. Our trip through the California Spanish Assessment has concluded. Now I'm going to turn it over to Education Programs Consultant Devin Triplett, who is going to take you through a short tour through the Starting Smarter website for parents and guardians.
Thank you, Paul. Hi, everybody. I am Devin Triplett, Education Programs Consultant in the English Language Arts Literacy and Mathematics Summative Assessments Office. And for our Starting Smarter update, I think I'm just going to turn on self-driving as we have a prepared video demonstration for you that will walk you through the Starting Smarter website. Hi, everybody. My name is Devin Triplett. I'm with the English and Math Summative Assessments Office in the Assessment Development and Administration Division. And today we're going to walk through the Starting Smarter website. Starting Smarter is a public website designed to support LEAs in helping students and families better understand the California state assessments, make meaning from state assessment results, and to access free resources to support student learning outside of school. There is a CAASPP Starting Smarter website and an ELPAC Starting Smarter website. And we encourage all LEAs to promote Starting Smarter with students and families to better understand state assessment results. And while this website is available all year long, we think it may be especially helpful surrounding the delivery of student score reports to students and families in the spring. Okay, so let's begin. You can navigate to the CAASPP Starting Smarter site by going to the URL ca.startingsmarter.org. And the ELPAC Starting Smarter website is located at elpac.startingsmarter.org. This website is also linked from all student score reports. Both websites are pretty similar in structure, so I will primarily use the CAASPP Starting Smarter website during our walkthrough today, but I will call out some unique resources featured on the ELPAC website as well. Now, the first thing I will point out is that each of these websites is available in English and Spanish. You can toggle between each language by selecting the Espanol or English button in the top right of the landing page, respectively. At the top of the landing page will be a section titled Understanding Your Child's Student Score Report, with some introductory text outlining the purpose of the website. Below this, you will find links to the parent guides for understanding. These guides come in PDF format and provide a brief yet informative overview for each assessment. They are also available in 9 separate languages. You may find these useful prior to testing when notifying parents about the administration. Next, if we scroll down, you will find a section titled Understanding the Score Reports and Areas. In this section, you will find sample student score reports, also known as SSRs, for each assessment, as well as other resources to support understanding of results, such as performance area and level descriptions, videos to help understand the student score reports, as well as a resource to support understanding of the ELA writing extended response question. You can select the different tabs to access the sample student score reports, and then there are buttons below each tab to access the various resources. Next, we will find a section called Check Out the Test Questions. This section allows the user to select their subject, grade level, and test area to see a small selection of test questions with answers. So here I will select ELA, grade 4, and composite claim 1, reading and listening. When I select submit, it brings me to sample test questions for grade 4 for composite claim 1 for ELA. Each selection will have anywhere between 3 to 5 sample test questions, as well as the answer key for that test question. And we'll navigate back to the landing page. And below the Check Out the Test Questions section is a section called Check Out the Test in Action. Now, this section takes you to the practice and training tests. These are great resources when preparing for administration to help students and educators become familiar with the test delivery system, as well as the accessibility resources available. If we scroll down further, we will find a section called CAASPP as a System of Tests for All Students. If you select the Learn About Accessibility button here, it will connect you to a wealth of accessibility resources available for the CAASPP and ELPAC assessments. The CAASPP and ELPAC have many accessibility resources available for all students, including students who have specific learning needs, such as those with disabilities and those learning English. On that website as well, you will be able to connect to the web page that will connect you to links to the videos for each of the accessibility resources. The next section is titled, How Does My Child's Performance Compare? The View Results button here will take the user to the test results for California's assessments website, where they can view aggregate CAASPP and ELPAC results at the school and district, as well as the state level. Finally, we have a section titled Additional Free Resources to Support Your Child's Learning. This section has a variety of resources to support parents with learning outside of the classroom, as well as resources to support conversations between parents and their child's educators. All of these resources are free to access. The first tile on the CAASPP website connects users to the Learning Heroes website, which contains several resources and tools, such as grade level roadmaps, readiness checks, and a parent-teacher planning tool to help students thrive in school. On the ELPAC website, the first tile is titled Support Your English Learner Child and connects parents of English learners with information on how their learning and progress can be supported outside of the classroom, as well as important information about EL reclassification. The Support Your Child's Learning resource contains steps parents can take to further support their child's learning and development outside of the classroom. The Partners in Learning resource provides information for families as they work as partners to support their child at school. Parents can review this list to guide conversations with their child's teachers. Similarly, the Guide to Parent-Teacher Conferences worksheet offers a guide for parents for discussions with their child's teacher about how well their child is meeting grade level expectations, and as well as how they are progressing in their learning. And then finally, there is a link to the CDE's Lexile and Quantile Measures webpage, as well as a tile that brings you to a FAQ page where users can access frequently asked questions and answers regarding the CAASPP and the ELPAC assessments. And that is an overview of the Starting Smarter website for the CAASPP and the ELPAC. We hope this website supports your efforts in helping parents and guardians understand student results and what they can do once they receive the results. Please add any questions to the survey form for us to answer at the end of this session. If you have any additional feedback about the website, you can email us at caaspp@cde.ca.gov. Thank you.
Okay, so there we go. Our trip through Starting Smarter has concluded. As I mentioned, if you have any feedback, please let us know. If the site's working for you, please let us know. If you would like to see some enhancements, let us know as well, right? Now we're going to motor on to updates regarding the achievement level descriptors. All right, so let's continue on with updates to the CAASPP achievement level descriptors. And before I begin here, I'm just going to offer a reminder that the aggregate results for the CAASPP and the ELPAC will be publicly released on or before October 15th, 2025 this year. The only exception for this are the results for the CSA, which will be released later in the winter. Okay, so on to the next slide. In March 2025, the State Board of Education, also referred to as the SBE, approved revisions to the reporting achievement level descriptors, which I'll refer to sometimes as ALDs, and the achievement level labels for the California Science Test, as well as the Smarter Balanced Summative Assessments for ELA and Mathematics. Now, these revisions were made to support a clear understanding and interpretation of CAASPP results for students, parents, guardians, educators, and interest holders. And prior to the SBE's decision, the CDE gathered feedback through a number of focus groups, among other methods, to inform recommendations for the SBE's decision. Now, on the slide here are the revised labels for the Smarter Balanced Assessment for English Language Arts and Literacy, or ELA. In your resource guide, you will find the revised ALDs for the Smarter Balanced Assessments for ELA, Mathematics, as well as the California Science Test. Now, it should be noted that none of the cut scores or the scale score ranges have changed. Only the language of the levels and the labels have been changed. Scores will remain comparable from year to year. And also, I will add that the ALDs for the California alternate assessments for ELA, Mathematics, and Science, as well as the ELPAC, remain unchanged. On this slide here are the previous achievement level labels compared against the revised achievement level labels. Level 4 has been changed from standard exceeded to advanced. Level 3 has been changed from standard met to proficient. Level 2 has been changed from standard nearly met to developing, and level 1 has been changed from standard not met to minimal. Now, the revised ALDs and the labels will be reflected in score reporting for the upcoming 2025-26 administration. You will see this reflected in the following reporting materials: the student score reports, the student score data files and the data file layout, the California Educator Reporting System, also referred to as SERS, as well as the test results for California's assessments website, that's the public reporting website, and finally, you will see it reflected on Starting Smart. The CDE will be working with its testing contractors to release a series of resources and communications to support LEAs in communicating the changes to students, parents, guardians, and interest holders, as well as resources to support understanding and clear interpretation of student results. Now, finally, Smarter Balanced has developed a resource document called Next Steps for Supporting Student Progress. This resource provides suggestions for how parents, guardians, and educators can use CAASPP results to continue to support and build on student progress. And that is all for me. So back to you to introduce our next stop and presenter, Paul. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Devin. Alrighty, everyone. Our ride through the achievement level descriptors has concluded. Now we're going to shift gears to updates regarding SERS. Please welcome Education Programs Consultant Jill McCormick.
Thanks, Paul. Welcome, everyone, to the SERS updates portion of our journey. I'm Jill McCormick. I'm an Education Programs Consultant here at the California Department of Education, and I'll be your tour guide on a quick shortcut through some exciting updates and information about SERS. SERS is the California Educator Reporting System and is available to educators who need access to student results from our state's summative and interim assessments. California educators continue to help shape SERS by providing feedback that guides new features and improvements. Some examples of this will be included in our tour today of the recent SERS enhancements. Let's start with our first notable landmark, a refresh of the individual student reports, or ISRs, for summative assessments. You may recall that the ISRs for CAASPP and interim assessments were first added to SERS in the summer of 2024. At the same time, the ELA and math ISRs for interim assessments were updated to match. This past spring, the ISRs for summative assessments were also refreshed to be more consistent with the ISRs for the interim assessments. Now, all the ISRs have a more consistent design, so they look similar across subjects and assessments. For example, the headers all include the assessment type and subject and are bright blue for the summative assessments and green for the interim assessments. The layout of the ISRs is consistent with student and school information at the top and the overall results chart and description. There are also some updates to assessment-specific data. For example, the ISRs for summative ELA and math now display the composite claim results. And for the summative ELPAC, the composite and domain results are included. The ISRs also have improved accessibility with font size and contrast. Cruising on, the next Vista point on our tour highlights the group display for the summative ELPAC results. For the summative ELPAC, SIRS displays overall, domain, and composite area results. So when the summative ELPAC results for a group or grade are displayed by domain, there's a chart for each of the domains: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Previously, when a student was not tested or exempted for a domain, their results for the completed domains were not included in the group charts. Now, all available results within a domain are included. That means if a student has results in the listening domain, then they will be in the distribution chart, even if they do not have results in another domain. This also occurs when the summative ELPAC results for a group are displayed by composite area, which includes a distribution chart for oral language and written language. Now, every student with a composite score will be included in the group for that composite area. Let's turn here and move toward a highlight of the tour: the new tools to manage student groups. Managing student groups, or rostering, is the process of assigning students to educators. Rostering must be completed by LEA or site coordinators in order for teachers to view their students' results. Users with coordinator access can now assign, download, or delete one or multiple groups in a single bulk action. These features are accessed from the Manage Student Group screen, which displays a table of existing student groups. In the last column header, there's now a checkbox to select or deselect all groups and a 3-dot icon to open the bulk action menu. Student groups can be selected or deselected using the checkbox in the column header or the checkboxes at the end of each row of a student group. And when they're selected, there's a light blue highlight inside the row. And if the cursor is placed or hovering on a row, the row has a blue border around it. The 3-dot icon in the column header opens the bulk action menu, which includes assign, download, and delete. The assign action allows the coordinator to assign one or more student groups to another educator. Now, that educator must have the appropriate TOMS role to access SIRS, and then that educator will see the new groups on their homepage the next time they log into SIRS. The download action allows the coordinator to download one or more student groups into a CSV file. The file is in the same layout as the upload file template, so it can be used to make changes to existing groups and then be uploaded back into SIRS. And here's an important tip. Review the file closely and verify that enrollment changes, including exits and new students, are reflected, so teachers will have access to their students' results. The delete action allows the coordinator to delete one or more student groups. Please take caution. Even though there's a confirmation message, this action cannot be undone. The last enhancement to visit is the SIRS sandbox, which has been updated. Earlier this year, the sandbox was expanded to include fictitious data and publicly available test items for both the CAASPP and ELPAC interim assessments. This means the sandbox mimics the live SIRS environment with item-level information for all of the interim assessment subjects. Then in the spring, the sandbox was updated again to incorporate the changes and enhancements recently made in SIRS, including the ones we just toured. Now, you may already know about the SIRS sandbox, which is a publicly available training environment that allows educators to get familiar with the features and functions of SIRS in a non-secure environment. The sandbox is just one resource to support your use of SIRS, which leads us to the next scenic spot on our detour: resources. There are several resources available to educators that support the understanding of SIRS. Links to the sandbox and more can be found on the SIRS resources page at the CAASPP and ELPAC website, a popular point of interest. Other resources include SIRS User Guide, which describes the features and functions in SIRS and provides instructions on how to use them. SIRS Interpretive Guide, which helps educators understand and explain assessment results. SIRS Instructional Videos, Quick Reference Guides, and the SIRS Data Dictionary, which outlines the structure, definitions, and formats of data in SIRS. The final tourist attractions to visit are trainings for SIRS. There are a variety of free CDE-sponsored SIRS trainings available, and they use the Sandbox and other SIRS resources to support all roles of educators in SIRS. Search for SIRS trainings on the upcoming and on-demand training page at the CAASPP and ELPAC website. Here, you can find both live and recorded trainings on SIRS. For example, upcoming live trainings for 2025-26 include Introduction to SIRS for Coordinators and Administrators, offered on August 20th and October 7th from 8:30 to 11:30. Introduction to SIRS for Teachers, which is on August 27th and October 9th from 3:30 to 5:30, and SIRS Beyond the Basics. Those dates will be announced in the Assessment Spotlight. These trainings are all hosted by the Sacramento County Office of Education on behalf of the CDE and are held virtually with live experienced trainers. Recorded trainings are on demand, including the Introduction to SIRS Microlearning video series. This series comprises a complete training, but the topics are separated into short videos for convenience and efficiency. The videos are on average about 4 minutes long, and there's a series for teachers and another for coordinators and administrators. On-demand recordings and materials for past SIRS trainings are also available. Descriptions for each of these trainings and registration for the upcoming live sessions can all be found when you expand the selection using the plus icon. And that drives us to the end of our detour through SIRS. Hopefully, you picked up a couple of nifty SIRS souvenirs along the way. Be on the lookout for future enhancements, resources, and trainings in the Assessment Spotlight. And now back to Paul to introduce our next stop.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joel. Really appreciate it. Alrighty, everyone, our journey through SIRS has concluded. Now we're going to cruise on over to updates regarding the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Up next, please welcome Education Programs Consultant Julie Williams.
Well, hello. And thank you, Paul, and thank you all for being here. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm going to take us on a little, first of all, I'm Julie Williams, and I'm here to take us on a little tour of the National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP. So what is NAEP, you may be asking? Mandated by Congress and first administered in 1969, NAEP is the largest nationally representative assessment of what students across the United States know and can do in core subjects. So what does that mean? Well, NAEP is representative, meaning that a sample of schools and students are selected to take NAEP and represent the rest of the population. This allows us to say a lot about groups of students, but nothing about individual students, schools, or most LEAs. NAEP allows us to compare states to states and states to the nation. NAEP is designed to be curriculum neutral across the country, and it is not aligned to our California Common Core state standards. However, NAEP frameworks were used to help develop our state standards. And NAEP results are released as the nation's report card. So let's take a look at NAEP 2026. Now remember, NAEP selects a representative sample of schools, and they base that on school size, location, demographics, and achievement. For 2026, the sample included over 500 California public schools out of 10,000 from over 200 different LEAs. NAEP field staff will administer the assessment. Repeat, NAEP staff will administer the assessment. Yet every school needs a site coordinator to help prepare for NAEP. So might a site CAASPP coordinator be a good choice? I think so. For the most part, just 50 students per school will be randomly selected. A few schools in Los Angeles and San Diego Unified School Districts may have larger samples to help produce district level or LEA level NAEP results. And students are randomly assigned to a single subject, which takes them about 90 minutes. So NAEP has a goal. They've been moving toward this for several years to use your LEA or school equipment to administer NAEP. And they won't be doing that in every school this year, but they would like to do so in most. NAEP has been very clear about this goal and moving toward it for several cycles. And NAEP's technical specs call for Windows devices or Chromebooks. Apple devices are not yet supported. Separate keyboards are required. No touchscreens are needed. So most LEAs were notified of a school technology survey earlier this week. And the survey is embedded within the NAEP assessment management system. So responses are due by September 19th and will determine if NAEP uses school equipment or NAEP equipment. If no response is received, NAEP will plan on using school devices. So if you get that survey, make sure you respond accurately. So what grades and subjects are being assessed by NAEP this year? So we have a big operational test, meaning that the results will be released as the nation's report card. We're doing grade 4 and 8, math and reading, and grade 8, civics and US history. In addition, NAEP will be piloting new items aligned to updated math and reading frameworks in a pilot test for grades 4, 8, and 12. So when is the NAEP testing window? Thank you for asking. January 26th through March 20th, 2026. And as far as next steps, if your LEA or school is selected for NAEP 2026, look for the following reminders. First, to complete the school technology survey by September 19th. And next, expect details about school coordinator tasks and timelines. By early November, assessment dates will be set by NAEP and shared. And by December 8th, student samples will be released and NAEP field staff will reach out to school coordinators. So thank you for accompanying me thus far. Please enter any questions you may have into the Q&A form. And it has been an honor and a privilege to serve as your NAEP state coordinator. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julie. Really appreciate the update on NAEP. All right,
You're
everyone.
welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. Appreciate that. Okay, everyone, we're going to take another 5-minute break, and this is our second rest stop. And, take this time to review what you've learned so far, stretch your legs again, check in with the Q&A form if you have any questions. Awesome. Well, welcome back, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started on our second Q&A. In just a minute. So what we're going to do is we're going to use about 20 minutes or so, and we're going to use this time to unpack your questions and provide you with some answers. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Tracy.
Thank you, Paul. The first question for the California Spanish Assessment: can LEAs use the California Spanish Assessment as a tool for the State Seal of Biliteracy eligibility? Great question. As stated in the presentation, we will be bringing our threshold scores to the State Board of Education in September. As a reminder, we cannot get ahead of our board's decision, but if the State Board of Education approves the CSA threshold scores, the CDE will be recommending a threshold level needed on the high school CSA to meet, in part, the requirements for the State Seal of Biliteracy. Next question. When is the next web page update to the State Seal of Biliteracy expected from the CDE? Although we are collaborating with the Multilingual Support Division on the work regarding the State Seal of Biliteracy, I do not have this answer. I would recommend the LEA to reach out to the Multilingual Support Division at msd@cde.ca.gov for more information. Next, are the high schools expected to score the speaking portion of the CSA, or is everything scored by ETS? During the September 2024 State Board of Education meeting, the CDE announced that all speaking items would be scored through ETS to lessen the burden on our educators. Will CARS be applicable for the CSA? Will CARS be enhanced to avoid alerts that are related to the prompts or gibberish, etc.? CARS is currently not designed to read Spanish responses, but CARS is always subject to enhancements owing to its significant role in providing assistance as early as possible for the students who may need it. Please note that alerts will be submitted by our human raters as testing and scoring continues.
So there's questions on Starting Smarter. The Starting Smarter website is a great resource. It's this website content accessible to other languages. When a parent types in their primary language in the browser, will all the content translate? So Starting Smarter is available in Spanish using a toggle at the top right corner. While Starting Smarter is not available in other languages, we do have parent guides to understanding available in 9 languages. Many users may be able to translate the Starting Smarter webpage under using a browser translation tools. Another question is when I make choices in the check out the test questions and press submit, nothing happens. This is for the ELPAC Starting Smarter. So just please make sure to make a selection for each of the search criteria: test, grade, and area. If the issue persists, you may try clearing your cache in your browser and trying again. We'll also investigate this issue further on our end. Thank you. And then we have a bunch of questions moving on to the ALDs. It says, can you repeat what Devin said about the release in October 15th? So when we say October 2025, we're talking about the aggregated 24-25 results for CAASPP and ELPAC, including the statewide results. Those will be released on our TRCA test results for California on or before October 15th. Another question for the ALDs, is the word standard before these new names, or is it only the one word name? So for our new ALDs, the word standard is not used in the new names. The next question is just to clarify, when we get our 24-25 administration data with a new ALD, will it be the new ALD language? Devin said it was changed, but he also said for 25-26 administration. So the revised ALDs and labels have been approved by SBE and will begin being reflected on the reports for the 25-26 administration year. So any data that we get for the 24-25, including TRCA that we will release on October 15th, will still use the previous ALDs. Where can I get access to the next steps for supporting students' progress document to help communicate the new ALDs? Are there any additional resources to support districts in sharing this information with the community? So this document is still being finalized for posting. Once it is completed, we will be announcing it in our assessment spotlight and including the resources to support communication and interpretations of the revised ALDs. However, a draft of the next steps documents can be found in attachment 1 of item 3 in the May SBE meeting. And last question for ALDs. We received an email saying the final scores of summative ELPAC is in. When should we expect the email for the ELA and math summative? And there are final quality checks in progress now, and final remaining scores for CAS, excluding the CSAs, should be available within the next few weeks. Thank you. And moving on to SIRS.
Thanks, Judy. I'm going to address a couple of questions regarding SIRS and then circle back to some additional questions about the interim assessments and tools for teachers. There have been a couple of questions entered regarding the the specific level of permission that is provided with different TOMS roles, permissions and SIRS. And there is a section of the SIRS user guide that provides a really nice table of the specific permissions that are provided for each TOMS role. And it's the Accessing SIRS section of the user guide. The URL for that specific section of the user guide is going to be dropped into the webinar chat for easy access. But there was a specific question about the TOMS roles that provide the ability to manage student groups, essentially, create student groups. And in a nutshell, the more administrative level TOMS roles provide that access. For example, LEA, CAASPP coordinator, LEA, ELPAC coordinator, Educator district, they all have those permissions to create and adjust student groups. Have another question about whether it is possible in SIRS or from SIRS to download student summative data with the teacher names for an entire school district. And I'm not familiar with a way to do that. There could be a way to do that, combining the LEA score download with an insert with teacher information from another spreadsheet. But I would say for any sort of technical assistance with SIRS, if you are the district coordinator, please reach out to your ETS success agent for assistance. If you are someone other than the district test coordinator, you would want to reach out to your district coordinator. But I think that probably was coming, that question was probably coming from a district coordinator. There's another question about whether student groups that are assigned in SIRS can be assigned to multiple teachers. And the answer is yes, it's absolutely fine to assign the same student group to multiple teachers. And there's a very specific question about the possibility of a future enhancement, which is they're asking specifically about any potential plans to increase the roster group limit to something beyond the current limit of 200. And that is a request that we have heard before. It is on our radars. And it is an enhancement that Smarter Balanced is considering. There's quite a bit of system testing that has to go along with that to make sure that there aren't compromises with system functionality by increasing that limit. But please be assured that that specific enhancement is on our radars. Okay, now I'm going to switch over to circle back to some interim assessments and tools for teachers questions. There is a question about the blueprint that is being used for the interim comprehensive assessments. And just a reminder, the interim comprehensive assessments are those full form interim assessments that at one point in time did match the blueprint for our summative assessments, but as was acknowledged earlier, for the last few years, California for the summative assessments has used an adjusted, shorter blueprint. The blueprints for the interim comprehensive assessments are still aligned with the full form. And there's a question about whether the blueprints for the interim assessments have been updated for this school year for 25-26, and the answer is yes. Those are all updated and available through the CAASPP.org site and CDE's website. And there's another question about tools for teacher self-registration that does not seem to be functioning. So a couple of tips in that space is that the self-registration is not immediate. It can take up to 30 minutes for the self-registration for the account to be created after the self-registration steps are followed. If an email is not received within that 30 minutes, we recommend you check your spam folder. And if you waited the 30 minutes and checked your spam folder and not seeing an email, if you are not the district test coordinator, I would recommend you do reach out to your district test coordinator. If you are the district test coordinator, again, reach out to your ETS success agent for further assistance. And one last question before I hand it back over to Paul, and that is about whether the system functionality is the same for both the summative assessments and the interim assessments in terms of the accessibility resources. And the answer is yes. So all of the Smarter Balanced assessments for interim and summatives have the same functionality and item types. And the same goes for the ELPAC and CAST interims and summatives. So that is all I have for right now. Paul, back over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jessica. We're going to go ahead and ask Julie to jump on, and I think she has a couple of questions, and then we'll hand it over to Judy as well.
Hi, thank you for the questions about NAEP. I'm always really excited to talk about the program. So first, I got a couple of questions about, well, how do we know if we were selected to take NAEP? Well, I sent emails in the last 2 weeks to schools and districts. I largely, the district communication goes to the superintendent, and I copy the primary LEA CAASPP coordinator. So one of the questioners, I did just forward his district notification to him. Thank you, Robert. And in terms of who will receive the NAEP technology survey, it's going to be going to district technology directors or their designee. And Sal in Whittier, I can tell you your district was not selected for NAEP this year, so you don't have to worry about that. And I also got an interesting question. I don't want to take up too much time, but as you may or may not know, so NAEP is a project of the U.S. Department of Education. So how have changes to the U.S. Department of Ed affected NAEP? I will tell you, NAEP is required by law. It is written into ESSA, and there are other statutes specific to NAEP. And the NAEP program is largely run by contractors. So despite the decimation to the staff at the U.S. Department of Education, NAEP will go forward. Contracts are active, and plans for NAEP 2026 are going forward. So I don't foresee any delay in the administration nor the reporting of the results. But thank you for asking. It was a really good question. Okay, that's all I've got now, but go ahead and email things in to CalNAEP, CALNAEP @cde.ca.gov, and we'll address those. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Julie. We still had a bunch of a few accessibility questions that we want to respond to. And there was a question on the new accessibility items and how that will impact SACE to TOMS, the automatic upload process. So SACE and the SSI vendors will have the values shared in short order, and we'll need to configure them to send via the API or the application programming interface. So SACE and the SI vendors will have all the new updates. And another one was, can an EL student, not Spanish, have questions read aloud in English in order to give the students more time to process the questions, and similarly for the required SPAC math and CAS? And actually read aloud in English is available for all subjects. So just go and check the matrix to see how to follow the read aloud guidelines. And I think for English, it's allowed for the questions, not the items. So it is available for all questions, all subjects. And now Victus, can turn to Victus.
Thank you, Judy. All right, so I am going to circle back onto a couple more of the test delivery system enhancements. We got a couple of questions about this really cool sidebar that has been added for students that have designated support, so that they have that ability to adjust things within the test to help them do what they need to do within the test. So we had a couple of questions about once a student sets that, how does that apply moving forward? So once the student is paused or ends the test, then the settings go back to the original TOMS setting. So the tool that's assigned in TOMS is always going to be that default setting. when the student enters the test. And then the application is going to give the ability to let the student adjust it once they are inside the test, but it does go back when they go to a next test. And I do want to plug here that interim assessments are a really great place to try out all of these enhancements. A student might really love it, a student might not love it as much, but they can get a little bit more used to it by getting that familiarity when they're on the interim assessments. The other question is it possible to toggle off the individual test settings adjustment options? Understanding, and this is something that we talked a lot about too when we thought about this enhancement, is it going to be distracting for some students? So remember that there is a universal turn off all tools for students that you might have that might be a little bit more distractible in class, and you know that that's going to help them out. And then again, also these features with this sidebar is for students that have designated supports. So it is possible to turn off some of them. The TA is going to be able to make some of those adjustments in TOMS. And then again, that universal turn off all universal supports might be helpful for the students that we are particularly concerned about. And now I'm going to send it over to Erica to answer a couple more LPAC questions.
Okay, thanks, Vigdis. Yeah, there's a couple of LPAC questions we have to answer. The first is, we understand about the 30 calendar days to test the TBD students, but sometimes it is impossible to get them all done. What are the penalties if we go over the time frame? So as required by the California Code of Regulations, 11518.5E, no, I did not have that number memorized. All eligible students are required to be administered the initial LPAC or initial alternate LPAC within the 30 calendar days of their first day of enrollment or instruction. We encourage LEAs to do their best to test the majority of their TBD students within this mandated time frame. If you are unable to test a small number of TBD students during this period, it is critical that you document the reason why the students why the reason the student did not test in their cumulative folder, or you can document it electronically if that is easily accessible if it is requested during an audit. So, bottom line, make sure you document in case of an audit. Additionally, once day 30 arrives, LEAs are required to provide EL programs and services until the initial assessment is given and the official test result is produced and parents are notified. I do appreciate that. Great question. We do get that question a lot. So yeah, just do your very best. It is, required by our regulations. Next question. Is there a way in TOMS to ascertain if the LEA has completed the certification process for the 2025-26 initial LPAC? There is not a way to see this in TOMS, but you can see it in the administration scoring and training site, so the AST training site. And I'm going to go, we have the website at caasplpac.scoe.net. You can also contact Moodle support at scoe.net for any help related to this. And I'm not sure if someone can possibly put those links in the chat. That might help. Thank you.
All righty. Well, thank you, Erica. Managers, if there's anything else, any other questions you'd like to answer, please feel free before we move on to the reminders.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, we did get one that kind of falls under our category of other, and that is someone asked about the extent that AI is used to score constructed response and performance task essays. And again, I want to plug one of our meetings because we have the opportunity for educators to get involved in what is called range-finding meetings. And this is where participants, the teachers in California, score student responses from the field tests. And then they help identify those anchor sets that help us train the AI models. And then once questions are moved to summative assessments, responses to constructed response items are scored both by human raters for some items and a hybrid of human and automated responses for other items. And a percentage of all of those constructed response items are second scored by a human to ensure accuracy and reliability. And we have a lot of ongoing human oversight. There's lots of stages in that validation process. And if you want to know more about it, you can learn a little bit more about it in the technical report. And then the last question that I wanted to answer, well, it's not a question, but we had a couple of very, very specific questions. So I want to also plug
that we do have wonderful success agents. So if you are a new coordinator or if you are a coordinator with questions, please reach out and find your success agent. You can identify who your success agent is by looking them up on the CAASPP ELPAC website, and they have lots more answers for you if you want to talk to one of them. And that wraps it up for all of our questions. Thank you so much. I'm going to send it to Paul.
Wonderful. Thank you, Victus. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, audience, for submitting your questions. We really appreciate it. Alrighty. We have some upcoming trainings, and they're just around the corner, and we want to make sure that you stay up to date with some key reminders. First, we want to mention that the second AIM session, which will take place next week, next Thursday, August 14th, and the session will be from 2 to 4, and we're going to cover accountability. So please make sure you register, and we'll see you next week as well. And then we also want to remind everyone that registration is now open for the 2025 California Assessment Conference, or CAC. This year, it will take place on November 12th through the 14th at the Riverside Convention Center in Riverside, California. It's a really neat place out there. The CAC offers shared practice sessions featuring teachers, teams, school sites from across the state that have developed best practices for implementing assessment resources in support of teaching and learning. The link is in your resource guide. And also, just another quick reminder, if you are the primary LEA coordinator, you most likely received the coordinator survey this afternoon. Please keep an eye on it in your email. And if you could take the time to complete the survey, your feedback is important in helping us tailor our resources and trainings to better meet your needs. And we encourage you to share your thoughts and ideas with us. We look forward to hearing from you and learning how we can improve. In your resource guide, there is some contact information for the CDE and your LEA success agents. Please, if you have any other questions, reach out, okay? And one last reminder before we wrap it up, we want to make sure that you subscribe to the Assessment Spotlight emails. Instructions on how to subscribe are in the resource guide. You can also follow the CDE on social media. There are links to X and Instagram accounts, and they're also in your resource guide. And that wraps up our road trip. And it's been great as we went through the CAASPP and ELPAC program updates. On behalf of CDE and SCOE, our partners at ETS and other organizations that help put this event together, such a huge undertaking, we want to thank you for joining us. And we hope that these updates will help you successfully navigate California assessments this school year. We wish you a great afternoon, and we'll see you next week. Take good care.